Cool. All right. Well, welcome everyone to the official virtual Phoenix Mug kickoff. The Phoenix Mug, I think, has been around for a while, a little bit inconsistently. So we're trying to go ahead and get it started up again. We're going to have local events for people that are in Arizona, and then we're going to have virtual events like this one as well. So let me go and first introduce myself. My name is Raja. I'm the principal consultant / founder over at G&W Consulting. I've been Marketo certified since, I don't know, like when certification was released. I want to say like 2010, 2011. I'm a certified architect master from a Marketo perspective, Bizible specialization, and I have SFDC and Dynamics admin certs as well in my prior life as a consultant at a lot of like other kind of agencies before starting G&W. Also on the call to kind of help me is my director of operations, Conde Davis. He's also a Marketo certified expert, Bizible user for a good portion of his life, as well as SFDC admin. So we have a good skill set. Obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to please type it in chat, raise your hand in any way, and we'll definitely get to them during the sessions where we have a little bit of delay. So what are we going to cover today? It seems like a lot of people have Bizible, but we are going to do a quick overview. We're going to talk about like what is Marketo Measure, aka Bizible, for everyone that knows it. Why do we want to use it? What's the benefits of attribution? We're going to walk through three primary Discover dashboards for Bizible and Marketo Measure customers. As you know, there are a lot of dashboards available. We're going to walk through the three basic, not I wouldn't say the three basic ones, but the three main ones, and then go into questions regarding the specific board. So depending on what tier of Bizible that you have, some people have them, some people don't. So if you have tier 3, you have all the dashboards. If you have tier 1, you're missing some, and so forth. So I try to kind of cover how do we use the overview board? How do we use filtering to customize reporting? How do we share custom reports? And then we're going to walk through the different attribution models. Mainly, we're going to walk through is machine learning and custom models, and then go into what the standard models are and when to use them. Cool. So the first thing that we want to go over is the overview board. Now, before we get into the benefits of how we can use the overview board, we have to kind of label what the overview board is kind of designed to do. It is a high-level review of all of the revenue that is associated with any kind of deal size that you have, and it's important to kind of know the layout since we can't really change the structure. When we get into ROI, return on investment, or spend, just know there's three ways we can categorize spend inside Bizible. One is if there's tied to a campaign, if you upload the spend, or through paid ads. But first and foremost, obviously, we have to define what these attributes are in order to make them make sense. So one is your total revenue of closed won deals. One quick note, Bizible reports on open, so pipeline revenue, any opportunity that is open, or any opportunity that is closed won. It does not report on closed loss. So just know anytime you look at these metrics, if we're looking at spend, if we're looking at deals, or if we're looking at cost per deals, majority of this data is based off on open or closed won ops. Closed lost ops are not part of this engagement or a part of this dashboard. You can report on them inside CRM, but traditionally it does not essentially inside the Discover dashboards have that. So 2 is your standard chart. 3 is spend. Spend is once again calculated by 3 items. So it is your Salesforce campaign or campaign spend that is tied. It is spend that you upload inside Marketo Measure, and it's spend through any of your paid ads activities. Deals are total number of closed won deals. Pipeline revenue is total dollar value related to open ops. ROI is your spend versus your closed won deals. And your cost per deal is spend divided by total number of deals. And it's the average cost to acquire one closed won deal from start to finish. So important metrics to know, mainly because this is, since we remove closed lost out of the the equation, we're only looking at open and closed won, and that's where these numbers are generated from. So sometimes numbers don't relate well from a CRM perspective into Marketo Measure, because in CRM, more than likely, you have different types of data points, where Bizible and Marketo Measure is only operating on those two. Average deal size is a number of closed won opportunities. So the total amount related to all of the opportunities within a specific time range. So that's the overview board, and that's the layout, and that's how all of these sections actually calculate the data in order to show relevant information on open or closed won deals. The second part, this is part of my favorite section inside the overview board. If you've ever been asked the question, or if a question has ever been asked, is out of all of our channels, sub-channels, and campaigns, which webinar performed the best? Which event performed the best? Which social event? The number 11 here, we're going to work backwards. The campaign summary is generally the answer to that question, because you can look at total revenue attributed to each campaign, but when we get into filtering, you can select your channel of webinar. So as you can see, your channel summary looks at everything based off on the channel that the touch points are being directed with. Sub-channel is, well, if you have social, which sub-channel of social, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or content syndication, essentially it has what revenue tied to it. But the coolest part about this one is the campaign summary. It's a tab that's generally overlooked, but if you want to know in a specific date range which webinar had the most revenue, you can create a filter, and you can use filters, which we'll cover here in a second, to go ahead and just look at all webinars. And this will tell you in a date range which webinar had the most revenue tied to it. So if you've ever wanted to do an analysis, which campaigns, and particularly which campaign types that are performing the best, not only does this give you a high level of all of the campaigns, but you can filter down on each individual campaign as well. And as we're going through these slides, if you do have questions that you wanted to jot down, if you did have any kind of items, please, in the question and answer section, feel free to ask questions, feel free to ask any kind of information, and then myself or Akande will kind of make sure we bullet point those and come back to them as well. So number 9 for channel summary, it's total revenue attributed to each channel. So which channel has yielded the most amount of revenue? Sub-channel is one step deeper from channels. If channels are your higher level, sub-channels are all of the sub-channels associated to them. And campaign summary, one of the coolest parts about it is, like I said, it answers the question, which campaign out of a particular channel, or all of the channel, or certain channels is performing the best. Now the account-based marketing board. Once again, this is another one of my favorite boards inside Bizible, because it's a twofold report. It's a twofold board, I should say. Not only does it tell you total accounts, and you can organize this by specific accounts, you can organize this by specific sections, but not only does it tell you the total revenue, what pipeline revenue is associated to all of your current open accounts, how many leads were matched. So if there's leads that are not converted into contacts because of logic, like let's say I came in with raja.walia@gmail.com with my company at GNW Consulting, but you have an account called GNW Consulting with raja@gnwconsulting.com. The leads matched section actually tells you how many leads are matched to current accounts based off on that type of logic, whether it's domain, whether it's company, whether it's location, whether it's IP. It's really kind of slick because it gives you an idea of how many leads are unconverted to accounts that already exist. Opportunities touched, it gives you an idea of how many opportunities generally are touched across all of your accounts, and then gives you a total number of contacts that have touch points. Now, this is really cool, but the account-based marketing board, from an attribution perspective, will give you that information. It's a nice tidbit to have. But in 2023, when we're talking about account-based marketing and ABM strategy, one of the things that's not leveraged within this board that we help, that we've seen a lot with is using your account-based marketing board to effectively create an account-based marketing strategy. The two sections right below the board inside this board, so this is the first top section here and this is the bottom section, it actually shows you which accounts have which type of touch points. So which accounts have more touch points and what type of touch points are they engaging with. The cool part about this is that you can actually reverse engineer this. You can use filters, and we'll get into what those filters are and what advanced filter logic looks like, to look at target accounts from an ABM strategy. So everyone's talked about, we want to expand, we want to talk about top 10 accounts, we want to talk about top 20 accounts, we want to sell into these accounts. Well, the cool part about this one is essentially you can look at all of these touch points. You can look at all of these accounts, and I have everything blurred out from a name perspective. So a few of our clients obviously have Bizible, and I didn't want to show the names, but it will tell you not only the ID but the total number of touch points. And if you create a segment inside Marketo Measure to filter down into maybe your top 10 accounts, or even if you wanted to use filters to manually put in all of that accounts, not only does it tell you the channel of the most amount of touch points for those specific accounts, meaning what they're engaging with, but also what those accounts have been doing. So you can use this board not only from an attribution perspective to see what is the overall attribution, but you can also use it as a targeting mechanism to see what prospective accounts that you're trying to sell into and what touch points they're engaging with. So you can create messaging or use that channel to leverage more of those accounts as well. You can review what touch points are being utilized. You can see what they're engaging with. You can see who is engaging. You can see titles essentially related to all of those individuals. And you can create this as kind of like a holistic strategy based off on who you want to target. So not only attribution, but also from an account-based marketing perspective as well. Now, the engagement path board, this is essentially one of the most multifunctional boards that you can get. Is touch point count available? Sorry, we just had a question. Is touch point count available in a board outside from the account if we want to view touch points across leads and or opportunities? The touch point count board, it would be available. It depends on what tier that you have of Bizible. So you can look and control by opportunities and see what touch points there are, but you can also look at what leads essentially are on the overview board. So if you filter the overview board, where bullet points number 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, if you filter this board based off on leads and specific accounts or specific domains, then you can look at all the touch points that have been associated with channels. There's, like I said, there are different ways to do it. From a board perspective, it's just you would have to get a little bit creative with the filters. The engagement path board is one of essentially these boards. Like I said, it's a multifunctional board. This is where you can find touch points. It has the most filters out of any other board that there is. If we did have a demo instance, which I'm trying to get, I would be able to walk through it. However, since we don't, sorry about that. Since we don't have a demo instance, it's kind of more kind of theory talking, right? But you can use it for troubleshooting. You can find which touch points or make sure your online offline channels rules are associating to the correct channel. You can filter down based off on touch point type. You can filter by emails to see all touch points related to one person. The way that we've used this historically is that, or you can filter it by accounts to see all touch points across leads and contacts. But to kind of go back to the question that was asked is like, well, how are these touch points available outside of the ABM board? Well, you can also look at these touch points and you can filter by opportunities that are closed won and see all touch points across all people that were recorded. Now, the cool thing about the engagement path board is depending on how your custom model is set up or your touch point positions, you'll be able to see how much of that is associated, or you'll be able to see how much of that is associated to all of those touch points across all of those individuals as well. So before we get into filtering, I'm going to ask if anyone has any questions in there, and then just feel free to put your questions in and then see if we can just go through and answer them. I think we have another question that says, what if I don't see attribution data for a visible person? What should be done here? That's a broad answer, right? Because if you're not seeing attribution data for a visible person, that means that visible attribution touch point was not either related or it did not have a relation to that person. In order to, you can look at the engagement path board to see if there was, particularly for that specific person, you can filter down to that person and see what touch points there are. But if it doesn't have any attribution data, then we would have to see is was it a lead or contact? If it was a contact, then we would have to look at the associated touch point. So it's a little bit, like I said, there's multiple ways to do it, but ultimately, to answer your question, if there is no attribution data related to a visible person, that just realistically means that there is no visible attribution touch point that was created for that person prior to either the opportunity being open or closed won, or being opened or being closed won. And give me 1 second, I'm getting pinged a little bit on this webinar to see if there are people not being able to enter. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. We'll get into boomerang stages. Not everyone has boomerang stages because that's a tier 3. That's a tier 3 visible stage, but you can use boomerang stages on any open closed won open opportunity prior to it being closed won. But if we have time at the end, which we should, we'll get into boomerang stages. So filtering 101. So a couple things about the filters, which are very kind of underlooked generally, are what filters are available. So you can see a list of the most common filters on the right side, but there's two variations that you can, two items, depending on when you use the filters that are linked. So what webinar performed the best? So this is kind of going back to the overview board and saying, hey, which webinar or which channel essentially is performing the best from a campaign summary perspective, which is kind of cool because when you do set that filter, it actually does lock the sub-channels and campaigns for all options for all campaigns that are linked only associated to that channel. You can filter by the channel. It's going to refresh the entire board. There is Boolean logic for anything that is not a one-to-one. So for example, if it's a dimension, meaning channel is event or webinar, or what metric that you're reporting on is revenue, lead, or contacts, you can essentially create advanced Boolean logic to customize these boards based off on whatever channel or based off on campaign source, ad account. Once again, the engagement board has the most filters, but these are the most common filters that you're going to get in Marketo Measure. I don't see a lot of people use the Boolean logic to associate and customize these boards. But the cool thing is once you do kind of filter all of these out and create these custom views, you can actually go ahead and save those filters as well. So when I mean you can save those filters, you can say once you set all those filters, you can save this. You can click the floppy disk or the save button, kind of depending on how old you are and what that button identifies as. But once you're saved, it generates this URL at the very top. And the cool part about this is if you look at if you look at all of these, your filters are essentially saved in here. So if you ever wanted to share dashboards that you have created with other people, you essentially could just save all of your filters. So save all of these settings here, run and refresh the board, and then go ahead and share this link, and these filters will auto-populate if you have Bizible up and running. So if I wanted to share this with a Conde, or if I wanted to share this with another resource, I could create all of these custom dashboards leveraging these filters, leveraging custom segments, and just share those URLs across my organization, and it would populate, and then they could then in turn hit this floppy disk or the save button to essentially save all of those customized dashboards and reports as well. Before we get into attribution models, I'm going to answer the question on how, well, two parts, like what are boomerang stages and how can you use them? So boomerang stages are available in tier 3. And what boomerang stages allow you to do is if you look at your life cycle and you look at your lead funnel and someone, let's just say, is created and they go to marketing qualified, they go to sales accepted. Boomerang stages allow you to say that you can go from sales accepted back to marketing qualified, so you can essentially boomerang to the previous stage before moving on to the life cycle. It is a tier 3 version of Bizible, which is involved, and you can do that not only post opportunity creation, so lead or contact stages, but you can also do that, but you can also do that post opportunity creation. So if someone is moving down the stage funnel of, open opportunity, vetting, contract, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, whatever that may be, you can, if they move down those stages, you can have them boomerang if they do jump back and forth to kind of see how many times they go from one stage to the one stage previously to the next stage. So you can, let's say that you can use boomerang stages, but it would depend on what version of Bizible that you have. All right, and the second question is, we have a lot of duplicate records in our database. Can we filter Bizible touchpoints of these records in Bizible or Fire touchpoints? We don't use Bizible or Salesforce dashboards for Bizible touchpoints today for this reason. Can you elaborate on when you're saying like we have a lot of duplicate records? Can we filter? Are you talking about Bizible touchpoints or not Bizible attribution touchpoints, right? Yeah. So can we filter Bizible touchpoints for these records in Bizible? You can filter them based off on those records. The thing with duplicates and the way attribution essentially works and is which record is cookied. If I have 3 versions of me, what version of me is the one that is the cookie related to? That's the biggest hurdle that we run into when we have, I'm not sure if it's like a purposeful duplicate scenario or if it's a duplicate or like they're just unnecessary duplicates, or you have purposeful duplicates based off on BUs or business units. But if you have duplicates, the cookie associated to the email ID is what essentially is the, I wouldn't say limiting factor, but it's the hurdle that you would have to overcome. Because if you have 3 versions of me and the most recent version of me is the one that has been cookied, then that version of me will have all of the touch points. So you can filter based off on those records. It just would give you all of the versions of me there are with all of the different touch points there are. So if inside Salesforce, we don't use Bizible or Salesforce dashboards for Bizible touchpoints today for this reason. In Salesforce, you have actually an easier chance doing this since you're a Salesforce user, because you can consolidate all of those touch points and use custom fields or roll-up summary fields to create dashboards and consolidate all of the duplicates or consolidate all of the touch points to one Bizible ID. So there are variations to do it in Salesforce, but once again, like the touch points are, to answer your question, yes, but those touch points are going to be spread across those duplicate records. Cool. So I want to get into attribution models, and this is where I think a lot of people generally kind of have questions like which one to pick. By default, there's 6 attribution models that are available, and depending on the tier of Marketo Measure that you get 7. The 7th one is essentially the custom model, and the very kind of overlooked one is the machine learning model. So when and why would you use all of these attribution models? And just know you don't have to pick one, you can use all of them. The machine learning model is the only one that you can't report on directly, but we'll talk about what the machine learning model is, how is it calculated, and what does that do for you. The first touch model is relatively easy. It's what is the first touch, anonymous touch that cookied the person when they went to your website. 100% of attribution in this model is given to what cookied the person. So if you have a $1,000 opportunity and they clicked on a LinkedIn ad or something along those lines, but they didn't convert, meaning they didn't fill out a form, that gets $1,000. Lead creation, what created the lead. So they might have clicked the LinkedIn ad, but they filled out a webinar form, webinar gets attribution. So the premise behind these models is that they should be used in accordance to what your reporting is. So a lot of companies will say, well, you know what, the full path makes the most sense. Why? Because we're really reporting on first touch, lead creation, opportunity creation, and closed won. That's good to know, but if you ever wanted your cost per lead or you wanted to look at channels that are driving traffic from a demand gen perspective, first touch and lead creation are just as important. So you can create multiple dashboards and multiple reports to answer multiple questions. The U-shaped and W-shaped model, those are all kind of varying. So U-shaped would be what cookied the lead, what converted the lead, and what the opportunity was created. This model, this model is kind of devised for companies who say, we just want to look at marketing initiatives because post-opportunity creation, this really the sales job. So we want to look at all of the activities and that led someone to opportunity creation. That's where U-shaped come into place. W-shaped model, W-shaped, oh, I think I might be getting confusing those real quick, actually. Give me one second. The W-shaped model is essentially the just looking at my notes. Yeah, so sorry, I confused that one. So the U-shaped model is the anonymous, the W-shaped model is the one that I was essentially talking about. The W-shaped model is opportunity creation. That's the one that you would essentially want to use if you're saying, hey, you know what, from a marketing perspective, we just really care about all the way up to opportunity creation, and post-opportunity creation is kind of up to them. Full path model, the U-shaped model splits first touch and lead creation, and then the full path model is, of course, from start to finish. And those are the standard models. But one of the things that people generally ask us is, well, what is the machine learning model, and how do we leverage the machine learning model, and how do we use it to better enhance the custom model, and also how do we set up the custom model as well? So the machine learning model, this is one of those items that we talk about a lot, but it's kind of overlooked, is like, how is it calculated? So if you have Bizible, what Bizible provides, or Marketo Measure, I'm sorry, provides is a model that after every 7 days, once you have your custom kind of model set up, it runs and it looks at 3 kind of points to calculate a percentage of what is the correct percentage for each of your stages. So model accuracy is, well, essentially like if we build a predictive model with touchpoint data relevant, how accurate is the model predicting stage correlation to closed won? We also look at conversion rates. If leads or opportunities at a certain stage convert to the next stage, that means the machine learning model is going to give it a lower percentage. The reason it's going to give it a lower percentage is if you have a stage called marketing qualified, there's realistically only about I want to say maybe like 2 or 3 ways that someone becomes marketing qualified, generally out of all of the activities, right? And removing those from the picture. When their status is switched to marketing qualified, or if their score hits a certain threshold. Now, once someone goes into marketing qualified, what the machine learning model is calculating is what is the percentage. So what is the percentage of people moving in and out of that stage? And if it's very high, that means that the machine learning model is going to give it a low percentage. The reason being is because marketing isn't really influencing that change. It's more kind of like a slip and slide. People are just kind of like generally moving through it from one bucket to the other. If a certain stage is converting at a lower rate, the machine learning model is going to give it more points. Why? Because that means that the marketing is essentially influencing the stage from one to the next. So when there is a lower conversion from one stage to the next, that means that that is where the block is, and that is where marketing can essentially has the most impact. Whereas if someone is lead created and someone is marketing qualified and we're basing it off on score, we're basing it off on status, the machine learning model will say like, well, that just seems like a stage that someone has to pass through anyway, so we're going to give it a lower percentage because you have to hit that stage no matter what. Now, touchpoint uniqueness. If a stage, and you've probably seen this if you are Bizible users. If you're not Bizible users, there's different stages that we've talked about. So you have first touch, lead creation, opportunity creation, right? Those are all stages inside the funnel. And you can add in custom stages as well, but you also have the ability to double up one touch point. So if someone fills out a form and that was the anonymous touch, lead creation touch, and let's just say that also created the opportunity, well, the uniqueness of that touch point is diminished. Why? Because we're attributing so many stages to that one touch point that the machine learning model is going to essentially give it a lower weight inside its percentage than a stage that and a touch point that is just unique. So if someone was cookied or they filled out a form and that's what created the lead, and there are no other stages or there's no other stages associated to that touch point, the machine learning model is essentially going to give it a higher weight. Based off on these three items, the actual formula is model percentage is related to accuracy times conversion times touch point weight. I don't know what percentage of it is. That's not available, but those are the three main categories, like conversion rate, uniqueness, and accuracy prediction of how many records have gone through that model to closed one, what it takes to calculate the machine learning model. So what this means, and this is available kind of in every tier, what this kind of means is that when you devise a custom model, there's a couple do's and don'ts when it comes to these type of items. And I know there's one item that I mentioned about middle touches, but we'll cover that. But less sometimes is more for custom stages. Worked with a few companies that want to add in like the entire life cycle, right? Like from anonymous to known to engaged to marketing qualified to sales accepted to sales qualified to opportunity creation. And sometimes those jumps, whereas someone will come in to engage and be sales accepted, will kind of diminish the machine learning model to a point. So sometimes less stages or stages that you're trying to move someone forward from are essentially essentially better to add to a stage that to add every single part of your stages in the custom model. We don't want to overlap stages as well. So if you see the screen here, these are the standard stages without adding customizations to it. So if you look at first touch and lead creation, or opportunity creation, if you have a stage that you add to your custom model that is opportunity open. So for example, if I went inside your CRM, created an opportunity today, and the first stage that it goes into is open, that's no different than the opportunity creation stage by default that Bizible or Marketo Measure offers. Essentially, there's no reason to add that stage because then you're going to double up the attribution percentage for those stages. So what you're going to do is if you have a custom stage that says open, which is the first stage of the opportunity, and someone creates the opportunity, well, Bizible is going to give it, 20%, and then your custom model is probably going to give it like 10%. So you're going to double up attribution for someone just creating the opportunity. So we want uniqueness in your custom model, and we want the stages that are not kind of like a slip and slide for someone to go through. Like engaged, if your definition of engaged is someone that is 25 points, let's just say, or clicks a bunch of emails or fills out a non-instant convert form that says, hey, I'm going to go ahead and not submit a contact form, but maybe like a content syndication form. If that's your version of engage, everyone's going to go through that stage, right? Someone's going to fill out a form. Someone's going to click a link. 25 points nowadays is kind of relatively easy from a scoring perspective to obtain. And once again, what that's going to do is it's going to impact your conversion rate. It's going to impact the machine learning model where it's going to give it less of a weight based off how many people are very quickly moving through that stage. So you want to identify like what are the stages that our people are getting stalled at. Then we can relate those stages to the custom model and say, what is the activity that moved someone from that one stage to the next? A higher percentage, like once again in a machine learning model related to stage, means that if we marketing can influence that stage movement, those are the type of custom stages that we want to add. One key thing is that inside your CRM, make sure you turn history tracking enabled on all fields in CRM that you add to your custom stage, minus opportunity stages. But if it's for lead or contact, you can essentially enable history tracking. And what that allows you to do in Salesforce, it allows you to see what stage and when was that changed over time. So it gives you another level of reporting inside Salesforce that you can utilize. So when you allow that to happen inside Salesforce, it'll say when was a custom field edited, when did the transition occur, meaning that stage was changed. So it'll give you it'll just unlock another level of detail from a history tracking perspective of where they were when they went to it, when you essentially enable history tracking on your stages that are in custom model. One key note, lookup fields and formula fields, regardless of what CRM platform that you use, do not necessarily work at all. So if you can consolidate them into Boolean fields, or if you can consolidate that into like standard pick list fields, or the generally better. Boolean fields are ideal because you can just check and uncheck boxes. Yeah, so very good point as well, Amanda. Salesforce does limit the amount of fields that you can track history on. So it's not always possible depending on, what you're kind of doing to enable history tracking. And that's why we also say, less stages are more. So if you have a lot of stages, to Amanda's point, you want to enable history tracking on, it's obviously you're going to have to work with CRM. You're going to have to kind of see what's enabled, what's not enabled. But once again, like if you have specific stages in your custom model that you particularly want to track, one or two enabling tracking is a lot better than 6 or 7 or 8 or 9. And once again, these are non-opportunity stages, mind you. So this is anything post-opportunity creation. Now, one of the things I didn't mention in the original models is middle touches. So middle touches are available from lead creation, from U-shaped and onward, and you can actually add in a custom middle touch as well. So if people are unfamiliar with middle touches, it's just all of the touches that happened prior to them moving to the next stage. So what happened between lead creation and closed won, we essentially split a percentage of that revenue of the total opportunity across whatever those touches were in between the stages. I'm going to pause there real quick. Any questions from anyone? So we'll open it up for a little bit for QA before I kind of move on to the next slide. I know we're at about 43 minutes, 15 minutes to the top of the hour, 38 minutes in. Does anyone want to talk about custom models, filters? Anyone want to talk about the machine learning model or have questions on this? Cool. All right. Well, so the last part of this section for the remainder of that 15 minutes is an open-ended QA. I can unmute anyone if anyone wanted to talk or anything like that. But the next Phoenix Mugs, it is going to be in person. It's going to be in Scottsdale. We'll be hosting it. We haven't picked a location just yet. A couple topics that I've received and that have been submitted is for Marketo Engage, segmentation, dynamic content, ABM campaigning, and then dynamic chat. And then from a Marketo Measure perspective, is actually modifying and setting up the custom model. So I know we talked about from a theory perspective, creating reports in your CRM, whether it's Salesforce or Dynamics, using Marketo Measure data, and then kind of getting an understanding of buyer touch points versus attribution touch points. So these are the topics that have been submitted. Like I said, we will record it if you're not in the Phoenix area, and we'll make it available. But if you are in the Phoenix area, just know like we are trying to plan something in person rather than just doing kind of Zoom meetings like we have been. And then as always, if you have any other topics that you would want to talk about, that you would want to vote on, by all means, you can definitely go and submit it to myself, Akande or Emma, or even put it inside Bevy, I believe, if you had any questions. However, scenario C. All right, and then the last part of this, guys, is Q&A. So if you have questions, by all means, you can go ahead and just start typing them in chat, and then we're going to get to them. If you want to talk, just let me know, and then we can open it and we can kind of unmute you here as well. So Robin has asked, Sisu says, tell us the pipeline impact of XX event. What would you share and show? So that's actually an amazing question, because anytime that there's an event that has happened, here inside your campaign summary, it would show you that event. If we go into filters, and once again, I know we're flipping kind of back and forth between screenshots, but if we go under filters, you can essentially come in and you can choose that set event, or you can choose versions of that site type event. And what it would do is it would change your overview board here to just show all of the touch points related to that set event. So if we use that filter for all of those type of events, or type of those events, or a particular and specific event, the overview board is where you would see all of this data change based off on just that event. That's how I would show it. The second part of this is also in Salesforce, or inside your CRM. All of this data that Bizible holds, or Marketo Measure, sorry, I'm so used to calling it Bizible. So, but all of this data that Marketo Measure or Bizible hosts is in Salesforce as well. So you can look at all of this data set based off on campaigns and look at associate touch points. So but the first and the easiest way is literally come to the overview board, change your date here, and then go ahead inside the filters, select that essential event. One thing to note between Salesforce data and Bizible data, since Bizible has every single touch point there is, if you ever are running into the situation or question where you're in Salesforce and you're like, well, this data in Bizible is not in Salesforce, or there is a data mismatch, do not throw your mouse at the computer or break your keyboard. That's expected behavior. The reason being is because Bizible, if someone visits your page 500 times, Bizible is going to create 500 touch points of each of those scenarios. But if they don't perform an action related to that touch point, meaning they come to your website, they fill out a form, that touch point gets recorded in Salesforce. The 399 times they visit your page and browse around or kind of mess up your ad spend, but don't convert or don't have a legitimate conversion point, that data is housed in Bizible. Only the actionable data, meaning that it led to something, in this case, AKA a form fill out, that actionable data lives inside Salesforce. So if you've ever wondered, why is there certain data that's not in Salesforce? Because it's not meant to be, because your Salesforce admin would probably like, I don't know, lose their mind if they all of a sudden every web visit for every single person was automatically being synced every single time. So just know it's perfectly fine. You're not going to run into, don't kill yourself or anything like that where you're like, why isn't this working? It's supposed to. We're not supposed to send all of that data. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, like I said, I'm gonna leave the bridge open here. And if you have any, why would you say it's a normal difference between Salesforce? Is it like a 10%? Oh, I would say it's a lot more than a 10% difference. Because once again, like using the example that I just kind of gave, is if you have 500 visits, on average per person, let's say a person visits 50 to make it a little bit more rational, but they only convert or fill out the form once, or they're only a member of a campaign once. Well, that's 2 touch points that would be recorded in Salesforce minus the 48 touch points that are based off on web visits. So I wouldn't say like there's a 10% difference because it's going to be unique to your business. It's going to be unique based off on how much traffic that you're getting and depending on what conversion events are firing. Like for, I can give you an example. Like if you look at a company like Dropbox, for example, they probably get millions upon millions of visits. Their free trial pages are probably a subset of how many people will either sign up for a free trial. We record all of those free trials, but imagine the sheer volume of people going to Dropbox, right? So it's based off on your company's website, traffic to your website, and what conversion points that are available that really kind of determine what is the X amount of touch points and the difference between Salesforce and Bizible. So it's hard to say because it's all general. Banking websites will probably have higher, whereas SaaS or business-based companies might have a little bit lower. If you have a lot of content on your website that people are downloading and people are engaging with, you're going to have a lower amount. Good question, guys. Thank you. Thank you for engagement. Is always appreciated on these things rather than me just talking for an hour. We have 10 minutes. Feel free to drop off. Feel free to ask any kind of questions. But just know I'm going to go back to the end slide here. Uh, So once again, if you are in Phoenix, I hope you can join us. For it's in person, it's going to be in Scottsdale, and we'll send out more information on that. If you have any topics that you want to cover, please let us know as well. Do you have any great talking points to use to explain marketing influence? Marketing influence in Marketo Measure or marketing influence in general as like a category? And I would unmute you, but I don't know which one you are because it just says anonymous, anonymous attendee, so we can have a conversation on it. So in general, so yeah, marketing influence is kind of like a funny stage, right? Because everything technically can be considered marketing influenced, I would say, because marketing influence just means that something that moved the needle from one to the next, but didn't generally convert or had like a big play in it. So that's where I think middle touches are more best defined as influence, because if you have milestone events and you have a milestone of, let's say, opportunity creation or marketing qualified. Well, what made someone marketing qualified has higher weight than all of the influence activities that they did prior to that. So I would probably generally explain marketing influence as something that helped, but it wouldn't get the highest attribution percentage related to other milestones inside your other milestones based off on like these stages. Awesome questions. When do you change your attribution model? You versus, you know, that's everyone asks me those questions. Like, I would say if I would not think of models as something that you would change. I would think of models as what you're trying to accomplish from a KPI perspective. So if the idea is you in the U-shaped model, you want to look at attribution or lead creation and look at what channels created leads, then I would say use U-shaped. W-shaped is really good because it removes the sales funnel out of the picture from a marketing perspective. Because if you're a marketer, you're saying, I am going to report on all middle touches post opportunity creation because sales is handling, I'm sorry, pre opportunity creation, because post op creation, sales has to push that, essentially has to push that over. Um, to closed one. So W shaped is a really good metric to say this is how marketing attributed or contributed to the pipeline, minusing all of the activities that sales has. There's a couple clients that I've worked with in the past that, post op creation, there's a lot of dinners, there's a lot of events, there's a lot of touch bases, there's a lot of demos and redemos. And if you have activity tracking enabled, then what essentially ends up happening is that sometimes all of it is just sales. And then the machine learning model will say, hey, like it takes a long time, it goes through and all this other stuff. And you have all of these like different stages. But like I said, depending on when I would say use all of them. Like first touch and lead creation is to show where demand is being generated from getting people inside your kind of getting people inside your universe and how did they find out about you as first touch? What led them to trust you is lead creation. U-shaped is, well, I want to see a metric. I want to split the difference between what they came in with, what the inquiry was, but versus what created them. And then W-shaped is everything that they did prior to opportunity being creation, because after op creation, sales is handling that relationship. So uh, I'm never a proponent or I've never been a person to say only use one. I would say if you're using full path and you have custom, like if you have a custom model, you should be using the custom model over full path because you can customize it, obviously. And then if you don't have it, if you have like tier one Bizible, then full path is your next best bet. But I would say use all of the models. And once again, like if you think about the machine learning model as not like if you ever asked and you use the machine learning model and said, well, this doesn't make any sense. Why is the machine learning model giving this lead creation 5%, but we're giving it 30% because we think it's valuable? Just know it goes back to how it's calculating the formula. If everyone is just becoming part of a stage, it's gonna give it a lower percentage because that means that there's not a lot of marketing influence. Like there's not a lot of marketing activities that are happening to move people in and out of that stage. So just know, like, I would probably say use all of them if that answers your question. Of course. Awesome, everyone. Well, thank you for showing up. As soon as we get everything recorded, I will get with Emma from Adobe to figure out how and where I can upload this and figure that part out. Like I said, thanks for coming out. It's the first Phoenix mug. It's the first time I've hosted a user group just in general. So definitely appreciate all the support. And once again, if you're in person in Arizona, we'll send out, if you're interested in coming out, we'll figure out a place. We'll, get a happy hour or something like that going. So nothing says, Marketo and attribution like, drinks and happy hour. So we'll just be on the lookout for that if you're in the Phoenix area. If you're not, really apologize, but we'll definitely send the recording of everything that's discussed as well. So thanks, everybody.